Ryan was celebrating his 8th birthday, sitting on an exam table in my clinic. But the party crowded around him. They weren't there to celebrate. You see, his mom, his dad, and even his grandfather were there in my office with him. And they were all decked out, head to toe, in gear from Ryan's Little League baseball team. But now, they were holding their breath, waiting for my diagnosis of his shoulder pain. As a doctor, but even more as a dad myself, I thought they'd be relieved when I told them that all Ryan had was what we call little leaguer's shoulder. Basically, he'd been pitching too much and he needed a little rest. So when I gave him the news, their reaction shocked me. Mom started crying, Dad's face got red with anger, and Grandpa just shook his head in disappointment. Through her tears, Mom started pleading with me. He can't take 6 weeks off. This weekend, he's pitching in Jacksonville. Next weekend, we're in Birmingham. Then we're going to Atlanta and Charlotte and Raleigh and Richmond. He doesn't have time to rest. He needs to pitch. And I look over at Ryan sitting on the exam table, and he's completely unfazed by all this drama. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just an 8-year-old athlete sitting in my clinic. No, this was a classic case of what's happening to our kids today because of the intense pressure and relentless schedules of today's youth sports. But I also realized this was a preventable problem, and I want to share the prescription to treat that problem with all of you. The fact is, today's youth are tomorrow's future. But if our youth sports trends continue, our future youth, Ryan included, they'll be playing in a world of pain. Our young athletes, kids between the ages of 5 and 18, they're getting hurt younger, more often, and really suffering injuries they could avoid altogether. To give you a glimpse at what's happening in youth sports today, 29 young athletes will be rushed to an emergency room with a serious sports injury before this talk ends. And if everybody here in this auditorium were elite young athletes, about 126 of the girls and 84 of the boys would have experienced symptoms of high-level burnout because of pressure from parents and coaches. And if every seat here in this auditorium were filled by just 13-year-old athletes, 980 of you would be pushing and shoving your way into the aisles to turn in your jerseys because of that pressure. Now look, I'm not sharing these stats to scare you, not at all. And I'm not trying to convince you should stop your kids from playing sports. Honestly, I love sports. While other surgeons might fix your heart or fix your brain to save your life, I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon because I wanted to save lives in a different way. I want to save that part of your life that makes life worth living. And for a lot of us, that's the joy that playing sports and being physically active bring us. That's why I just want to make sports a little safer so we can all enjoy them now and in the future. And that's possible if parents and coaches just follow a simple, healthy injury prevention game plan like the one I'll walk you through in a few minutes. Like I bet a lot of you did, I played different sports every season growing up. I played soccer in the fall, basketball in the winter, baseball in the spring, swimming in the summer. And it was great. Whether it was rec league, travel team, it didn't matter. I loved every minute of it. Now, sure, we made mistakes, we laughed, we congratulated the other team when they beat us, but we had fun. I'll never forget some of the friends I made on those teams or going to get ice cream with my parents after games. That's why I really believe that you and I, we want the same things from youth sports. We enroll our kids because we want them to be healthy and happy, more confident, have better social skills. It's for all those reasons. I couldn't wait for my kids to play sports when they grew up. But once they did, and I started going to the games and talking to the other parents and meeting the coaches, that's when I started to see that today's youth sports are a completely different game than what we played growing up. So that we're all looking at the same score, here's what today's game looks like for so many of our young competitive athletes. Year-round daily practices at every age level, single sport specialization, widespread use of private coaches to supplement school and travel teams, and a cottage industry of tournament organizers, recruiting consultants, and schools that revolve around sports programs and not educational programs. The more time I spend around sports leagues and the more injured kids I treat, the more I realize that for a lot of those kids, play has become a 4-letter word. They don't play sports anymore. They compete in sports. They perform, perfect, cross-train, level up, and dream of seeing their name stitched across the back of the travel team's jersey, of catching a recruiter's eye and collecting college scholarship letters like baseball cards. So that's why I'm here. I see the trends, both professionally as a doctor and personally as a dad. But I know we can turn this game around. So here's what we need to see. Sports are great for our kids. But the way sports are played today, a lot of times they do more harm than good. With the intense competition and the physical demands, our sports programs are raising the bar higher than even our best pole vaulters can reach. Now look, I get it. We don't want our kids left behind, so we justify the time, the money, the effort we spend as an investment in their character, their health, and their college and future dreams. But most parents don't realize that all that work trying to catch a recruiter's eye might set our children up for overuse injuries like 8-year-old Ryan had. Plus, joining those highly specialized competitive sports teams requires a lot of travel and a lot of expense that might not be worth the investment. According to TurboTax, 21% of parents spend over $1,000 per child per year on sports. That means that by the time your high school senior is waiting by the mailbox for those college scholarship letters to arrive, you've already invested thousands and thousands of dollars in that sport. But let's face it, college sports recruiting is a winner-takes-all system. 93% of high school athletes will be waiting for scholarship letters that never arrive. But when you really study the numbers, the highest return on investment from sports comes in the form of fun and friendships and fostering a lifetime love of the game. If we want the biggest bang for our buck, we'd structure our leagues to maximize those points, not the points on the scoreboard. Now, before we go any further, we need to figure out how we can protect our kids from getting hurt. That's why we're here. So, what can we do to keep our kids safe? Because dropping out of sports and getting injured doesn't just hurt our kids physically. It impacts their identity and their social experiences, not to mention all those family memories we make at games all season long. Displayed on this screen, these statistics might just look like numbers to you, but these aren't numbers that I see. These are kids I see every single day. What's shocking is not how common these injuries have become, but just how preventable so many of them are. Every month, nearly 250,000 athletes, parents, coaches, and healthcare providers come to my website looking for sports medicine and wellness information. Their pain brings them to my site, but it pains me to see how many of these injuries could have been avoided if their parents and coaches had just taken some simple steps to exercise restraint and save our young athletes. So here's my plan to turn this game around. I've made one that we can all use, so everybody wins. And since being healthy is a big reason why we encourage our kids to play sports, I call it the Healthy Game Plan. Here it is. H, hours played each week should not exceed the age of the child. If your daughter is 12 years old, she practices and plays in games no more than 12 hours each week. E, elite level recruiting changes. We have to make the preservation of every young athlete's body a priority and remove the incentive for our kids to exhaust themselves in the hopes of being recruited. We're starting to see these changes in pro football and pro baseball, and if they take hold across all professional sports, they just might trickle down to influence the practice schedules of our young athletes. A, age and activity restrictions applied universally for certain sports. Tackle football, body checking in hockey, and heading the ball in soccer would wait until a child's 14 years old or older. L, less focus on winning, less focus on statistics, and more focus on developing healthy habits and fun. Companies like Nike are doing this through their New York City basketball partnerships that focus on leadership development. And ex-NBA star Muggsy Bogues, he's a shining example. He leads camps that use the game of basketball as a way of teaching kids to believe in themselves and their potential. T, one team, one season. Young athletes should only play on one sports team in any given season. H, hurting. That's right, hurting. Kids need to tell their parents and need to tell their coaches that they're hurting and not play through pain, as 54% of young athletes have confessed to doing. And Y, year-round sports. Kids who insist on playing one sport year-round must take 2 or 3 months off from that sport completely, or at the very least, do a different activity that stresses other parts of the body. Now, I'll be the first to admit that making sports healthy isn't going to be easy, but I promise it'll be worth it. If you're sitting there looking at these statistics and thinking, how much of a difference could the healthy game plan really make? Let me ask you one question. If running the healthy game plan only reduced these numbers by 1, but that 1 was your child, wouldn't it be worth it? The truth is, we know how good it feels to stand on the sidelines, jump up and down and scream, "That's my kid!" But I can tell you, when they're standing beside the stretcher in my surgery ward, that same sentence sounds a lot more like, "That's my kid." I'm telling you right now, as a doctor and as a dad, that doesn't have to be your kid. If we join together and follow the healthy game plan, we can radically reduce the odds that our children grow up to become statistics like these. Now the ball's in your court. We want our children to be successful and happy. So let's make youth sports better for our children. Let's follow the healthy game plan. Stop playing with America's future and save our young athletes. Thank you very much.